It's nice to be friendly and all, but isn't it better if we're helpful? What's going on, everybody? Today we're talking about kindness. Let's dive right in. Welcome back, everybody. My name is AP Raleigh, author of Abide, and I make Christian content to help both you and me grow in our walk with Christ together. Now, we are jumping back into our study of love in 1 Corinthians 13. And the next portion of this is that love is kind. And that feels really easy on the surface. And kindness is definitely something I've talked on before. It's another part of the fruit of the Spirit, frankly. And this word that's used for kindness is kind of cool because it's useful kindness. It's not just being friendly or being considerate or genuine for other people. It's doing so in a manner that's actually helpful, beneficial, helpful for them. This is that quintessential pursuit, I feel like, in love that that term just when we feel loved so often it's because someone is genuinely pursuing us, genuinely trying to figure out what we like and what we want and to give that to us. And that's this pursuit factor that I find with kindness and especially this useful kindness. Now, I went into this thinking, okay, this is a easy topic, not really something I need to dive into great detail on. We all get that, right? It's easy to be kind to other people. Some days are hard, but we can figure that out for the most part. And being useful, obviously we can get away from just the cliche things that we could do or sidestepping people's issues in way of being nice and actually try to help. In my books, it's intentionality. But then I thought about, man, well, how do we do this with God? Because the Bible also talks about loving God, loving self, and loving your neighbor, and those three are kind of essential. And so the neighbor I've got, God, that felt a little harder, but it's really kind of cool because I understand here that not only should I be kind to God, should I be genuine with God, should I seek to grow the relationship, but in the same manner, I'm actually useful to God. Like there are things that I can do that are useful and good, and that's how God made me was to have this intrinsic value, this intrinsic worth that I am useful to an almighty God who is infinite and has everything. That to me is pretty darn cool. And so what does that look like? Well, frankly, it's listening to him and doing what he wants. It's as simple as that. And that's not just, don't sin or go on a mission trip or whatnot, but more often than not, God is the teacher. And this is the next point, which I didn't really consider and was very difficult for me to comprehend. In fact, this took, I want to say, half my brain power all week long, just stewing in the back. And that being, how do I love myself? How do I do that? And that was a part of this whole thing, but how do I have useful kindness for myself? Because on that list, other people, easy. God, I'm sure sometimes I'm trying to figure out what he wants, but yeah, I'm gonna go with it's not too bad. He's my best friend. I mean I can hold a conversation. And then there's me. And I don't really like loving me and that's not a comfortable topic for me. But I also understand that if I'm supposed to love God with everything that I've got and that I'm supposed to love my neighbor as myself, I've got to be able to love myself in order to properly love my neighbor and to properly understand this concept. And so part of that means I need to be kind to myself. And I don't just need to be friendly. I don't just need to be cliche. I don't just need to be considerate of myself. I need to do things that are useful to me. And that's a really hard thing to define. What is going to be good for me now? What's going to be good for me in the future? I'm real good at looking in the future and sacrificing the now to get to the future. And this word is not time bound. It's not, oh, you should be kind to yourself. So, just slave away at school and that's just dive right in and make that your absolute everything and ruin your health and ruin whatever else is going on so that you can accomplish that goal because in the future that's going to make you successful. And that's kind, right? I mean, the outcome's great, but not necessarily. But at the same time, I can't just throw that all out the window and get rid of it. No, well, I'm not going to do this, and it doesn't matter. I don't know the future, and well, yeah, I don't, but I can make some educated guesses, and a lot of those educated guesses are that some hard work now will pay off later. But there is a balance, and that balance is really hard to hold, especially for me. And that's what I'm starting to find this useful kindness looks like. But moreover, it's going after things that may be uncomfortable because kindness is not always comfortable, which sounds odd. Kindness and comfort usually go hand in hand, but sometimes kindness, you know, I don't even know how to articulate other than to say I think it's one of the funniest moments I had with God, and I don't usually share it, but I want to share it, and that's I read Psalm 23 wrong for a long time, and I think God always let me do it that way, and has always cracked up at the fact that how I read it. It's also ironic because now I love word study and I love figuring out exactly what these things mean, and I was so far off, and yet it was so helpful, which just goes to show how cool God is. And that was this, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. That portion on the end there, I shall not want, is like I lack nothing. I shall not be in want. I always read that as God is the shepherd that I don't want to have around. I don't want God. And when I first became a Christian, that was really quite true, which sounds odd. God and I had some big tiffs, and we did. It took a while to build the relationship that we have, but I often didn't want God to be a part of things. I didn't want him to be involved, and so I had this. The Lord is my shepherd, I don't want. And then the next portion was, and he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. Again, this is beautiful. Poetry, oh, he's bringing me behind. Yeah, so how I read this was he makes me lie. It was very aggressive. Like God is forcing me to rest. God is forcing me to go to beautiful places. God is forcing me to enjoy my life. And that restores my soul. Now, that's not the verse. It was intended to be the pretty portion, and I think that's how most people do best at understanding it. But for me, this was a way that God has shown me that kindness for so long, because if we don't know how to love ourselves, if we don't know how to do an aspect of this, how do we learn as we watch God? Because God is love. God loves us. We know love because of God. So if we're trying to figure out a portion like I am, that I got so stuck on this, kept asking God, would you please just show me and show me? And I was getting so upset halfway through the week. And then I realized that, every night I was coming home from work and I'm tired and exhausted and I had things that still needed to be done. And almost every night, God was clearly just kept telling me, go to bed or take the night off or breathe a little bit. And my health's been in poor shape, and frankly, I needed the rest, and I didn't have it. And so I thought it was funny that after an entire week of this, I'm waking up going, God, how do I explain kindness, and how do I'm still not there. And God's just took me back to this. Yeah, the shepherd you do not want, who makes you relax and allows you peace. Guess what? You can do that to yourself. You can take yourself and, frankly, force yourself to have these moments of peace and prosper in that. And now I know that's not everybody. I know my workaholic tendencies might be a little more aggressive than most, but there's also people in the other camp that don't do anything at all and want to sit around and do nothing. And that's become a habit. That's become a norm, just like working too much has become a norm for me. okay, then there's the other side of it where, okay, now the short term, that's being cared for. You're in this place of rest. You may be in this place of peace, but there's no preparation for the future. There's no excitement for that. There's no long-term goal that's being pursued. And that's the other half, which is, I mean, you're by that green pasture, you have this point of relaxation, but with God, you are able to go through these crazy valleys, and you're able to go through valley of the shadow of death and have God with you. And literally, Psalm 23 is still my favorite ever, because it talks about God preparing a table before David in the presence of his enemies, and how his cup is overflowing. Literally, he's got everything he needs, both in good and in times of rest and in times of fighting and in times of passion, and it's okay in both places, and God's taking him through in both places. And so maybe you're not in a spot where you're pursuing anything, but you have this point of rest, and that's so beautiful. So now the kindness for you is to start pursuing something, because frankly, it gets so boring after a while. And just like we burn out when we work too much, I think on the other side, I don't know what to call it. It's not exactly a burnout, but it is. It's you get tired of resting, which just makes you in turn more tired. And it's kind of this endless cycle where you want to do nothing, but the reason that you want to do nothing is because you're doing nothing, and there's just something missing. So the internal kindness is what can I pursue? What can I be passionate about? And again, if you don't know how to do that, we look at God. And God, what's your goal? What's your excitement? And so many times, this is not a crazy thing. I think people are often scared to ask God, what do you want? Because it seems like it's going to be a terrifying, intense, you're going to send me away to, 4,000 miles away from everything I know and love. And that must be what you want. So I'm just not even going to ask. And there are so many times, in fact, just as I said, 3 times this week, God told me to sit down and play video games. Yep. Because I needed to breathe. Because I wasn't doing that. And that's what God wanted me to pursue that day. Tomorrow, maybe it's different. Maybe it is something crazy and exciting. But so often, God is able to look at both the short term and the long term. Again, we get this balance scenario, and we start to look for things that are kind and generous, but also allow us to progress, allow us to rest, allow us to breathe while pursuing these important dreams, these important goals, and these passions that God puts in our heart. So I hope that was helpful for you, and I hope that helps you grow in your relationship with Christ. Now, please, if you're interested in learning more about love, go ahead, like and subscribe so you don't miss a thing. I've got a bunch more. We're literally going through every single word in that definition of love in 1 Corinthians, and I know it's going to be a fun journey. Now, if you do want more of this content, you can't wait for another week, go ahead and check out over here. I just finished a entire series going through the fruit of the Spirit. I know that's going to be helpful for you, so go check it out.